Hey everyone, good morning. I have to say go green because I'm a proud Spartan, so it's great to be on campus. And I was telling Dr. Maston, I was trying to remember if I had been in this auditorium or not, and I think I have. It's been a while. But anyways, I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to focus on social media and go through. So glad she ordered extra lunch, no pressure on me, and I know you're all evaluating me too. So I hope you find this interesting and ask a lot of questions. So I wanted to start off with my career path, and it definitely has been unexpected. I can totally be honest and tell you it was not planned. First of all, can you guys hear me? Okay. I have lots of practice of like yelling in the football stands, so generally my voice carries, but I just want to make sure. All right. So started here as a Spartan, but I was in, my undergraduate degree was finance, of all things. So got a couple of internships at GM in the finance team and spent some time poke around there, which was a great experience. At some point, and I think it was after having many bosses tell me, you know, you really don't fit the finance mold, you got a little more personality. I was like, I feel like there's something else. And I went to Oldsmobile, which is a brand that's no longer around at GM, and fell in love with marketing. I'm like, this is super cool. Instead of just kind of doing numbers and crunching all day and really not connecting it to what a company does, I'm actually talking about the product and talking to consumers, and fell in love with it. So I wound up moving over to Saturn, spent many years there doing advertising. So this was old school TV, production, print, radio, newspaper. It was the very, very start of social media. And what had happened, if you remember Saturn as a brand, is right before bankruptcy at GM, they were put up for sale, so it was either going to be sold or closed. And those were the really early days. This is 2009 of social media. We had a Facebook page. We had a Twitter. I remember the day GM declared bankruptcy, and my boss came to me and said, I have a conference room. You're going to be in there all day, and all I want you to do is sit on Twitter and answer questions about the bankruptcy. And I was like, oh my God. Now, if you ever had that with crisis communications, I'd have legal in there, I'd have a ton of people, but it was basically me and a pizza answering questions on Twitter and really not knowing what I was doing. As it turned out, though, it was really great because having that early social media experience has really kind of paved the way for what I've done then. So Saturn did unfortunately close. I left GM and went agency side. Started at Weber Shandwick, so I was supporting GM, but on the PR side, which is also kind of a different path and perspective from marketing. Doing social media, so a lot of influencers, a lot of programs, a lot of content, and I had a chance to go to Europe, which was fabulous. So I went to Europe in 2013 to run social media on the agency side for Chevrolet Europe. I was in the regional headquarters in Milano, which was fabulous, amazing food and wine. I highly recommend it. Had 18 countries reporting into me. And then Chevrolet pulled out of Europe. So I was out of a job, but found another job working with my same clients and moved to Frankfurt, Germany, working for Cadillac in Europe and trying to get social media up and running because they didn't really do anything, and spent a couple of years there. So came back almost 3 years ago. I'm now at MRM, and I'm going to talk about my job in a little bit, but what I want you to take away from this is that, I'll be honest, like I was doing finance when I was in your shoes, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. There is no one path. So I think for me, the lesson I want to kind of like share with you is opportunities will come up. Sometimes jobs are just there to learn what you don't want to do. But like, don't freak out if you don't have a job that's exactly what you think you need to have, because it will lead you to places that you will never have expected. I mean, I can tell you for sure I never would have expected that I would have had a chance to go work in Europe. Absolutely. All right. So I like to say social media isn't necessarily social media marketing. And I know for a fact, because I've had different people in my family, different friends, be like, what do you do all day? Like, you just on your phone, taking pictures? Like, they think this is my job. I wish this was my job. It would make it easy. I mean, for sure I'm online and paying attention to channels, but at the end of the day, I really am responsible for marketing. So this is stuff that I really need to be paying attention to every day. There is so much going on in marketing, and social especially, right? I feel like every day, even every week, Facebook has a new algorithm. Instagram is introducing a new shopping tool. TikTok is blowing up right now. So paying attention to what are people doing, what are brands doing on Reddit. Like social studies, there's behavioral studies that come out right now about how social media is impacting like mental health, and really having to be careful about, okay, if I'm working with brands on social media, what's the right role for us? So lots going on in the social media space, and I really need to have my finger on the pulse of all of it. I love this chart. I wish I could say I created it. I stole it, source. The thing I want to take away, though, too, is a lot of clients and people in the business really think social media is standalone and silo. It's not. It's part of a huge digital ecosystem. And if you just think about the way that you all consume media, right? You're not just on your phones. You're watching streaming TV. You're listening to Spotify. Like, you as a consumer are getting hit from a bunch of different places, from media or marketing messages from brands. And it's really important that as you're thinking in my shoes, I can't be standalone and silo. If I'm telling you a different message on my social channels that you're hearing maybe on a Pandora ad, it's not working, right? So I wish I had a clicker. We're right in the upper corner. So it all has to work together. And I think if you look at campaigns and you look at just every day, you'll either have one of two things generally happen. You'll have maybe a big TV campaign with a lot of arms and legs, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll throw social in. Or they'll come to me and be like, we want this really cool social campaign. And I'm like, well, what are you doing on search? What are you doing on web? It all has to hang together. So that is my one big soapbox moment of like, don't let social be standalone when you're talking about marketing. So I love studies. I think it's really helpful to, because this space is changing all the time, right? People's behaviors are changing, how we're using media is changing, where we're using it is changing. So I find that studies like this are really helpful for me to understand and keep up with, or try to keep up with what's going on. So I think if you just look at it from a brand standpoint, and I don't think any of these are a surprise, like here's what we want as a client or a brand to do, right? Grow the audience, increase your advocacy, get the word out. But if you flip it and you look at how people use social media, there's a disconnect, right? So yeah, of course you want to learn about a new product. You don't always want to hear an advertisement, that's for sure, but you want to be entertained, you want to be educated, and it's going to depend on what channel you're at, what time of day, if it's the weekend, if it's after class. So I think what I just want you to take away from this is there's a disconnect, but at the end of the day, if I don't think about from a consumer standpoint what they want from me as a brand, I'm really not going to be effective. And I thought this was interesting as well when you look at social media platform use in terms of where brands are at and where consumers are at. And again, this should be a lot closer. So something that I always have to think about, and I always challenge clients or my colleagues, is what is the consumer doing? What's our target doing? Where are they at? What are they thinking? What are they wanting? What would they be interested in hearing about from us? And just here are some interesting things in terms of why they might follow and why they might not follow. And I want to talk to you a little bit about followers, because that still is a measuring stick, I think, that a lot of clients are like, especially when you talk about influencers or how many Facebook fans they have, it doesn't matter anymore, right? So if you look at, I'm going to take a minute because I feel like I'm talking a ton, but I need a break. Where's it? It's no surprise that the marketing platforms want companies to pay, right? So they changed their algorithms where 2 years ago, I needed to put 5 pieces a day on every channel because it was reach, right? And the more content I pumped out, the more a consumer would see. That today has completely changed. So really, the only way that I can get to consumers now is through paid campaigns. So the importance of having 5 million followers really isn't there anymore, because it doesn't mean they're going to see my messages. I'm going to have to target and pay for my marketing messages. So I think when I talk to people who want to be influencers, they're like, oh, I want to get to 5,000 followers. I think that's fun, but I think just realize that that is something that has changed and really is not that important. This stat to me blows my clients' minds, and it's actually crazy, because I think they think about, well, here's what I'm hearing on my social channels, or people aren't really talking about it. Most people, when they're talking about brands, are not doing it on that brand's social channels. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but social listening is really, really important to understand what people are saying. All right, so I'll be honest, when I was trying to think about what to talk to you today, I could spend days talking to you about all the different nuances of social. There's a ton going on. Influencers could be a week alone. But I wanted to just give you just some basics in terms of how I approach social in a marketing standpoint with a client. How many of you are dealing or have worked yet with owed, painted, earned? Does that sound familiar? Some? Okay. This isn't just for social, but it's really a way that we divide up, either from a media standpoint or a marketing standpoint, the different types of messages. So if you think about an owned, it's what a brand controls. So it's a website, it's an email, it's an Instagram channel. I'm controlling, from a brand standpoint, all of the content that you're seeing. Paid, a little different. I'm controlling what you're seeing, but I have to pay for the reach, and it's going to try to reach different targets that may not know about my product or may not be aware of who I am. And then you have kind of the unicorn, the whole earned, which is something I can't control, and I just hope that people are talking about my brand and talking about it in a positive way. So this could also be, if you're in PR, working with journalists to try to get a story out there. It's me working with some consumers that I see a fan making a comment about how much they love my product. I have a conversation with them online and just say, thank you for being such a great customer. And now they're even more of an advocate. So they're talking about the brand. So this is something that we're always concerned about, but from a brand standpoint, you really have no control over. And again, from a social standpoint, it's really important to understand these three buckets, because owned is really decreased in importance. So what I put on my page now on a Facebook channel or an Insta is more for people browsing and researching or wanting to go and complain or talk about what they like or don't like, versus seeing content in their feed. Paid, I'm going to be working with media agencies to really try to figure out, where's my consumer at, what do they want to hear, when do they want to hear it? And then earned is really, from a social standpoint, being on the community, responding to them, engaging, and really turning them into like fans, like from fans into super advocates for the brand. So this is a really fun graphic I love my agency created. And I think one of the interesting things and challenging things from a social media standpoint is, unlike other marketing campaigns, it doesn't ever end. It's 24/7, it's weekends. Crises always seem to hit on a Friday night at like 10 o'clock. But if you think about a TV campaign or an email campaign, you generally have stages, right, where you have a start and a finish. But with social, once that piece of content goes live, like the beauty of social is people can respond to it. That's also the challenge of social, is that I can't ignore something once it goes out there. I've got to be paying attention and responding. Or, as you saw with the 96% of people talking about a brand somewhere else, I have to be paying attention from a social listening standpoint to understand what's going on. Is there a crisis I don't know about? So this doesn't ever end. So I'm going to break down each of these in the next few slides, but always starts with strategy, whether it's social or not. Content is a huge piece. Community management, super important. And data. Something I forgot to mention, and this may or may not be good news, is I was so excited when I left finance. I'm like, yay, no more math. Like, I'm done with math. You're never done with math. I do way more math than I ever thought I would in advertising, whether it's budgets, whether it's timesheets, whether it's looking at the data. So that could be good news for some of you, maybe a little scary for others. Don't be afraid, but just understand that you can't get away from math. And data is getting more and more important, especially in the social media space, because it's helping us understand what's going on. So here's just some things if I wanted to call out that I have to think about when I'm putting together a social strategy. And a lot of times if you sit in a meeting and people are like, oh, we should do this and we should do that, you realize it's something that's more tactical, but there's really no like roadmap to help you get there. Strategy is super important. I don't care if it's social, I don't care if it's your business strategy, your overall marketing strategy. You need some roadmap that you can then plan out how you're going to go after and get your business done. And there's a ton of pieces that go into it. You need to understand your consumer. As a strategist, I have to think about insights that are really going to help drive what I'm trying to do. From a content standpoint, I love this, by the way. I think a huge challenge for content, right, is you only have so much time in the day and money. So I don't have the option to make as much content as I would like. It's just not possible. But the reality is also that I can't make one piece of content and necessarily use it anywhere. And then I think if you think about Snapchat and stories, the way that we're telling stories is different. And from a marketing standpoint, I used to spend weeks on a photograph of a car, for example, that was going to go into the brochure, making it perfect. Like we retouched it, it was beautiful. If you look at stories now, and this is hard for a lot of brands to like kind of show you what's real and be like, this is kind of like behind the scenes and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to feel very like, here's what's going on. That's a huge shift from like a mindset from the client. So trying to understand how to properly tell a story, because a good story will always resonate with consumers, but it's not always going to be the same. This is a donut chart. I love this chart. We use it all the time. And I think probably this is going to be obvious for everyone in the room, but it's also quite a bit of a newsflash to a lot of people that I work with in terms of I can't necessarily use the same piece of content on a Facebook ad that I would use in other channels. Obviously, I don't have every channel on here. These are some that most of the clients are using the most, but there's a different language, right? Like if you're on Twitter or you're on Insta or you're on Snap, you're doing different things, right? You're looking for different things, your head's in a different space. I have to think about that when I'm creating the content. And I can tell you more often than not, it's like, oh, we have this OLA unit, right, which is an online ad. Just throw it in that Pinterest buy. Like, I can't. People are using it differently. Engaging the community. So the cool thing about social is it's two-way. I think it's something that a lot of companies forget is that people talk back to you, right? You cannot ignore them. I see a lot of brands that will put something out there, they'll put a post out there, and people will start commenting like, I've got a question, that's not working for me, and there's zero answer, right? Or they might say, hey, I really love your product, and I'm super happy I have it, and there's no response. Like, you cannot treat social, if you're a brand, like you would treat a TV spot, email, a Spotify ad, because people have and will talk back to you on social. And that's the biggest gift, I think, of working in social, and the biggest thing that will drive you crazy, because there's a lot of trolls out there. You all see it, right? And you cannot answer every troll that's like barking at blah, 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 blah. But you've got to pay attention, and there are people that you need to answer because they have a legitimate issue with your product or with your brand, and you need to help them. So there's some stats that I use a lot. In social, especially in Facebook and Twitter, is really becoming a place for social care. So I know I use, like, for example, when I'm flying and I have an issue on Delta, I don't ever go and stand in their customer service line. Who has tweeted at Delta if you've had issues? Let me tell you, but how was your experience? Was it, they will answer you. Yeah, if you try and call their customer help, and even if you're like priority, yeah, exactly. So I think Delta does, and they drive me crazy in a lot of ways, but they are doing a great job in a customer service standpoint. And you want to get to someone. You don't want to, if you are stuck in an airport and your flight is delayed and you're going to miss your connection, you do not want to be sitting on hold or in a like 30-person line. You're like, I need immediate help. And the companies that are able to help you or at least get you an answer, even if you don't get the answer you want, which has happened to me, I still feel like at least they heard me, right? So I highly suggest, at least if you ever fly Delta and you have an issue, and I tell people this, always tweet them at Delta, they will answer you. They also expect, and this is a challenge, like an answer almost immediately. And I'll show you a slide in a second. Like, it's not only a struggle to let companies know you have to be responsive, but you can't wait next week or like take your time and be like, well, I need to talk to 3 other people because I'm not quite sure that answer. You have to at least say, hey, I heard you. I don't have an answer right now, but I'm working on it. Because otherwise, people just think you're ignoring them. So we know that it has impacts as well, both positive and negative. If you do acknowledge and you do help them, they're going to be a loyal customer. If you don't, if you ignore them, they're going to walk away. So my favorite phrase, one of the favorite phrases, is social is a two-way conversation. You've got to be able to engage and engage quickly. Social care, which is what we're calling customer care, is a requirement. And I know GM, which is one of my clients, does a really good job. Several years ago, they had your traditional customer care, like phone call center. They pulled a team off and put them on social. They've won a ton of awards because they know how important it is to have people not only monitoring the channels, but proactively going out and looking to see in forums and blogs where are they having issues. Times of crisis, and those are always fun. People are always using social media, and you'll see this in a second. And again, I think this is really where a lot of brands miss an opportunity of acknowledging the positive comments. So if someone just says, hey, I really liked your product, or I had a great experience, it doesn't take much time for a brand to just be like, hey, that's great. A lot of brands don't do that. I would suggest you need to take it even a step further and just be like, what did you like about it? How did it help you? And have a real conversation. When that happens, I think you feel special, right? Because the brand's actually listening to you, but you also feel appreciated as a customer. And that, to me, is really the holy grail and the best part of working in social. It's the only place in marketing that you really have a chance to constantly talk to your customers. A little up. So I don't think these numbers are a surprise, but it kind of blew me away when you look at it. So this happened a couple years ago, but when this airline had a crash landing, the first passenger tweet was in 30 seconds. CNN was on them in 4 minutes. And I bet that time change is like, or that time lapse is even shorter. The average, and I would say this is low, company response time is 21 hours. So there's a lot of things that get out that if you're not paying attention, you're not ready, because generally when crisis is hit, you're not expecting them. So social is front and center, and every social media team really has kind of what I call a crisis management plan in place so that if something goes down, and like I said, it always seems to happen on a Friday night at 10 o'clock after a long week, some bad post goes out, is you have to have a plan to know, like, who do I talk to? I need to have access to, the attorneys. I need to be able to talk to the head of the company. Like, if something's not in place, things can go bad really, really quickly. Data, too, is getting, and Julia, who's in the audience, and I talked about this. It's really interesting to see how data is impacting the world. And I think when you think about, how many of you are familiar with the Cambridge Analytica scandal on Facebook and the privacy? Okay, a few. So, when you do those, like, okay, if you were going to be a character from Harry Potter, what character would you be? And you play all these fun little games, right, in post. Or people my age do that. Google and all of the platforms are collecting a lot of data about all of us. And that is the reality of being in a connected world, like it or not. There's no way to avoid it. If you have a phone, if you're online, there's information about you. Now, the good thing from a marketing standpoint is it helps us understand what people are interested in, and it helps us get you the right message. But I think there's a real concern right now about data privacy and how much do I want you to know about me, but I also want to be told, like, I want to hear only things that are relevant that I'm interested in. So there's a lot of conversation and sensitivity about using data and how we can have it help us without feeling intrusive. So we rely on it really heavily in social and a couple of different places. And I'm going to go backwards in a second. Social listening. So when I talked about that 96% of conversations that's not happening on a brand's channels, social listening is how we find that 96%. So there's a bunch of tools. My agency uses like Crimson Hexagon, NetBase. So what that does is it's basically trolling and scraping the internet, and I'm looking for conversations about my client or the competitors or what people think about like doing laundry, something to help me understand what are real-time conversations. It's basically like off-the-shelf research I'm designing to help me better understand how do I build a strategy, how do I provide content that's going to be really helpful. From a performance analytics standpoint, when I talk about this is more like looking at when you're setting up your strategy, and I forgot to mention this earlier, it's really important, and goes for social, this goes for marketing, to think about what am I trying to achieve with this? What are my objectives? How am I going to measure it? Am I measuring it by how many people are engaging with a post? Am I measuring it by how many people are sharing? How many people have seen it? I have to think about what I want that content and those actions to do, because then I can come back and figure out, did it work? So I've got some analytics that help to tell me this piece of content about this lifestyle moment, someone went to the movies, did really well. But when I show a picture of a tire on a vehicle, people are super bored with it. So I really need this information to help me understand. I might think I know, but until I really see what the data looks like, I'm not making a really good decision. The other thing, and I'll show and share some sources with you, is because this crazy business is changing by the day, studies are coming out all the time. And I think, for me, I find it really helpful to pay attention to an eMarketer study that's helping me understand people are using Instagram for shopping, and they're using it at X%. So there's a lot of just data out there that is also helping me build strategy. And finally, and we talked about this as well, the future of where agencies are going, because you've got consulting agencies that are pitching for the same business that my agency, which is traditional, is. I think data and how we harness data to really deliver personalized messages so that you get exactly the message you want where you want it, but it's different from what I'm sending you. And from a scale standpoint, that's still really hard to do, but the data is going to, I think, help us get smarter and smarter with data and technology that I can deliver messages that are very personalized and very fragmented. So it's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. I told her if I knew what agencies looked like in 10 years, I'd be very rich, and I could be retired and on a beach. All I can tell you is they're going to change. I don't know what it's going to look like. I can guarantee my job in 2 years is going to be completely different from what I do today. But I think just knowing that and keeping flexible and seeing like what's happening and what's breaking can really help you be more connected with some changes that are coming. So I wanted to share a little example because I think you might be surprised like every day what it takes to get a piece of content or a campaign out and how many people you need to deal with and work with to make it happen. So I made up an example of just like, okay, we need a paid Instagram campaign for this quarter. Like from an agency standpoint, what do I need to do to get it out the door? So it first starts with the brief that strategy reads or puts together. So there's a broader strategy that I'm working on that drives and kind of roadmaps. But when I'm thinking about something like an Instagram campaign, I need to help the creatives saying, here's a challenge or here's a business problem we're trying to address with this campaign. So I'm going to give you some insights. I'm going to give you some data about the customer. I'm going to give you some tools you need so you can then sit and work your creative process. You've got copywriters, you have art directors, you've got different levels of management. This is a magical place. I've seen some brainstorming sessions, which is really fun. But they're kicking around ideas, they're discarding them, they're tweaking them until they get to something that they feel they're ready to come back to myself as a strategist. At the same time, you also have account guys and project management that are helping keeping everything going, because this for sure is not the only project you have. So you need the account team, the project management to keep all the parts and pieces moving, because these of course all have deadlines. They're generally deadlines that are more ambitious than you'd like. You never have enough time to do what you want, but they help you stay on track. So you've got changes, you might have some feedback, they need to update it, get it to a place finally where we're ready to take it to legal, and then it enters a whole new fun space. So hopefully you've got something clients are happy with. They generally have changes or at least some tweaks. You always need to send it to legal, and that's its own set of what they find important and what you have to say, what you don't have to say. But yay, we finally get approval, we get to build it, goes back, the creatives are involved, we've got production, we might have some technology. Oftentimes we're working with a platform where we might be talking to Instagram, saying, hey, could you help us on some specs, some best practices, some things. There might be a beta, something cool that we're testing with you. And it takes time to produce. And then we go live, yay. Doesn't stop there for social, but the media agency will help traffic, get it together. And by the way, this timeline can fall apart at any second, and often does. So your budget could be cut, the client could change direction, something strange could happen that you've got to put it on hold. So this is kind of a living, breathing, general direction that happens every day, but isn't necessarily always going forward. And as I said, once it goes live, I can't ignore it. People are going to see it. People are going to comment and talk about it. So I need to make sure that I have a team in place, reacting, watching what's going on. Is there something we didn't think about that is causing concern? Any questions or issues, we're on it and watching it. And then finally, with the performance analytics, we're taking a look. How did it do? Did it do what we wanted it to do? I set some objectives that were part of that strategic brief. Did it match it? Anything to help me understand. So when I go into the next strategy, whether it's for a specific project or bigger. Do I need to change where my head is at, what the strategy is? All that data will come into play. So I was just going to do case studies today, which also I think would have been a fun class, but I love this because it shows you the power of social. How many people have been following the Popeyes Chick-fil-A? Don't be shy, put the hands up. How many of you have posted online about it? I know more than a couple people have. All right. What is so, like, fast food to me is a super fun category to watch in social. If you think about what Burger King and Wendy's are doing in the last couple of years, it's brilliant. And not every industry and company can do it, but I love that they really looked at what social can do and jumped in and said, we're going to do something that maybe 4 years ago we would have gotten fired for, but we're just going to go in and we're going to poke fun. IHOP decides they want to be about burgers. We're going to give them a hard time. This is really, to me, what social was designed to do. This is when it's super fun. So what I especially love about Popeyes, if you think about, right, they're not a big guy. They did not put a ton of money behind campaigns, which is what you normally need for something like this to go as big as it did. But what they did is they realized in this space, people love to talk about, like, compare. Which one did you like? I love Chick-fil-A. No, I love Popeyes. They really tapped into an insight of how people talk about food today on social and set it up so that they did poke Chick-fil-A a little bit. And as people started commenting and competitors, they got in the conversation. And it blew up. Obviously, I think none of this is new. Sold out after 2 weeks. People were losing their shit. Like, videos were going in terms of people showing up and there's no sandwich and it's sold out. So I love this as an example, and we were watching it and it was happening. It's like, what are they going to do next? Like now, right, they're trying to bring your own bun. It's fun, but if you think about the media coverage they got that they spent really no money on, like, this is a holy grail. This is what my clients all want. It's not easy to do. But I think, again, what they were able to do is really think about how consumers talk about their category and really tap in. And when they saw the opportunity in other companies making comments, they're like, we're in. We're going to start making some we're going to get in the conversation. All right. So wrapping it up, here's some advice, and this is advice I would give not only to you, but to anyone. I try to follow it, to be honest. I think first and foremost, you need to be careful, and this is where I kind of feel like mom, but what you put online. I can tell you for a fact, every HR recruiter, when you apply for a job, is scouring the internet to see what you're posting. I'm looking at everyone who's interviewing for a job that's working on my team. I'm seeing you to see what you're posting. Even for myself, I'm connected with my boss, the heads of our agency, my clients. I also have to be really careful with what I'm posting. So there are times, just take a moment. I'm glad when I was here, social was not a part of my life, because I think maybe it'd have a bit of a different career path. But just be careful with what you're posting and be mindful that people are going to be looking at it and making a decision potentially on a job. I think this is really important, especially today, and as you guys are getting to the end of your college career. Like, it is not, once you get out of school and you do have a job, it's not regimented and as neat as it is, like, starting a semester, knowing when you have your tests, knowing when your midterms and finals are hitting, and a grade, and you're on to the next one, and you know what next classes you have to take. It is not that clear in real life. Change and uncertainty for sure is going to happen, and I think experience gets you to how different people deal with it in different ways. But I think you just need to embrace change and be ready that you're not always going to know what's going to happen. And sometimes I think for me, like I said, I never would have expected having the chance to go work in Europe. If I had tried to plan that, I don't think it ever would have happened. It was a function of just being open to some opportunities and how it played out. So our industry in particular, there's not stability. And I think you've got higher risk and higher reward. It's what makes it fun. People lose their jobs for no good reason other than, let's say, a client changes agencies. Good people always find a job. So don't let the future scare you. I think it's just a part of what we all deal with. I could be out of a job on Monday through no fault of my own. It's happened before. It will happen again. And I think it's just knowing that you work hard and what you bring to the table, there's going to be a solution. There's going to be something coming. So don't be afraid of the unknown. I think work hard, and this is also something so simple. If you're at work and you see your boss, your teammates have been working late for 2 weeks and you're going home every night on time, do yourself a big favor and just stop and be like, is there anything you guys need? Can I help you? That goes such a long way. You will never go wrong with putting your head down and working hard. Especially if you're new in a job and you don't really know what you're doing, effort goes a long way. And Dr. Maston may appreciate this, but finding some mentors, whether it's a formal mentor group or informal. I have people that I mentee, and I have people that I still look to as mentors. And I think it's really important to find people that you trust. You can just be like, I'm having this weird situation at work, I don't know what to do. Or I have these 2 job offers and I don't know which one to take. This will always help you, and I think gives you a little bit of comfort that you've got a confidant that you can trust, can give you some advice, can maybe help you talk through some things that you need to talk to someone about. And I highly recommend it. And fortunately, that's how I got to you today through Dr. Maston, is being a part of the Women in Advertising MSU Detroit mentoring, and it's been fabulous. I have a great mentee, and she inspires me more than you can tell. Every time I talk to her, I'm super excited. So I think finding people you trust and networking, which is the next, relationships, is super huge. I can tell you, especially in Detroit, but this is true Europe and everywhere, we say advertising is 1 degree separation. There are no secrets. Everyone, if you reputation is out there. So I think a couple of things. 1, networking is super important, but building relationships with the people you're working with every day is critical. So I'm working with the creative teams, I'm working with account, I'm working with technology. I need to be able to have those guys trust me, and I trust them. I see them more than I see anyone in my day anyways, because of the hours that we can work. It's really important, I think, to have a good relationship, because then you can focus on the work getting done. It's not always going to happen. You're going to always have, that person that is just a pain in the ass. But generally, if you can forge some good relationships, it is going to make your life so much easier. And above all, be curious. I think I am always learning. This doesn't change, but I think what you really need, it will never steer you wrong, is wanting to know what's going on, whether it's what's going on in the world or what's going on with the industry. Figure out, ask questions. Don't be content to just kind of sit in your bubble. It will always serve you well. So here's some things you can do now as you're looking for jobs, and it's a good practice. It's what I spend probably 1/3 of my day, is paying attention to industry, and I'll show you in a second some that I like. I get daily emails from HubSpot, actually more than once a day. eMarketer, Media and Ad Age are all telling me some things are happening, whether it's a new campaign Burger King is doing, a new study. If you're able to keep up on that and go into a job interview when you don't have a lot of job experience, one way that I think you can really put yourself into, because this doesn't happen a lot, so if I can have a conversation with you about Facebook's latest algorithm, or the Popeye campaign, or something that has to do with one of the clients that I work on, that is huge, and it's something everyone in this room can do, is be up to speed on what's going on in the industry and follow it, and then you've got something to talk about, and that tells whoever you're interviewing with, this person is connected and is paying attention and is interested to what's going on, and that's awesome. It is a huge advantage, and I'm telling you right now, it doesn't happen in a lot of interviews. And I think as well, another great tool that you have to use in advertising and marketing and PR is LinkedIn. So not only from a standpoint of career and making sure that's updated, using it for recruiting, look at companies, but one thing that I love that LinkedIn has become is a place for thought leadership. So I post a lot of the articles that I find that are super interesting there, and hopefully I'm becoming a resource, and you're welcome to follow me as well, in terms of sharing things that I think could help people that are in the industry. You also can do that. So if you're getting an article from Ad Age, or you're seeing something really interesting on eMarketer, because I'm going to go to your LinkedIn profile when I'm looking at you as a potential candidate. That's something really easy you can also do today. And I think that shows you and shows people that, okay, they're interested and they're making the effort to share things that they find that are interesting. So those are just as you're looking for jobs and coming out of school and what's next, two, I think, very easy things that anyone can do, and that I think will be a huge advantage for you in the marketplace. Dr. Maston can share this deck with you, but here's just some that I love that I get every day. Marketing Dive is great, Sprout Social. I live on Google, so there always tends to be articles as well. But you can sign up for daily emails and get on their distribution list. And it's quick scans, and I always find some interesting things that either I share on LinkedIn, or I flag for a client, or flag for one of my teams to say, hey, did you see this? This is really interesting. It could inspire you. All right, that's it. I feel like I whizzed through this because there was a lot. Am I okay on time? Okay. So you are more than welcome to reach out to me and connect if you want to connect on LinkedIn, on Twitter, LinkedIn. It might also show you some of the articles that I share as well, if you're looking for inspiration on what types of things. And I look forward to meeting some of you and talking with some of you. Thank you so much.